right, well, today we are back to work on the Turbo LS street truck here. This thing has been stuck at 90% finished for way too long now, and because of that, it hasn't really gotten driven. And we've been tackling the last few things piece by piece. We did a whole new exhaust. I built a full 4-inch out the back to quiet it down some. That was driving me nuts. It was way too loud, part of why I never drove it. It was also ugly. It was a monster truck, so we slammed it. And we most recently put a drag pack on it. So it's pretty much ready, but we got a couple of things standing in our way of really seeing what this thing is capable of. So today we're gonna be getting those knocked out, getting this thing sorted to where it's ready to go so that we can actually take a quick little trip down to Mexico and do some test passes in this thing and see what it's capable of. We have no idea, never really been able to use the power that it has because we haven't had the setup to do it. So we're almost there, almost there. We just got to get these last couple things knocked out, throw the draggy in it, and see what happens. So I'm excited. I'm ready to really use this thing. This is a truck I wanted to build for a long time. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. So that being said, the first project we need to tackle is the transmission cooling. We've gone through multiple iterations of the transmission cooler. It's just still not enough. So this truck has a 4L80E lockup overdrive transmission with a billet triple disc lockup converter. So it's a great setup for cruising around the streets. Perfect. We got overdrive, we got lockup. But for whatever reason, we just cannot keep the transmission cool in this thing, no matter how hard we try. So that is going to be priority number one because we can't drive it very far because we've got to worry that the transmission is going to overheat before we even get there. So let me lift it up. I'll show you what's on there now and give you a rundown of my plan to fix this. Hopefully fourth time's the charm. All right, so here's our current transmission cooler situation. You can see our lines come out of the transmission there. We got them heat sleeved, and they go all back here to this Duraley double core big transmission cooler. I mean, this thing is big. We started out with a kind of standard size oil cooler up here, and it didn't work very well. And my thought was it wasn't getting enough airflow, fan situation. So I decided to put a fan on it and move it to the back. So I moved it back here. Still wasn't enough. So then I got this Duraley, and I really thought that would be the ticket. And while it did work better, I still wasn't quite enough. So what I've decided to try is we're gonna leave this one in place, but then we're gonna add another cooler up front that will be getting airflow when we're driving. It is a lot of lines and it is two coolers. There is the potential that we'll have an excessive amount of pressure drop, which would not be ideal. So I logged and checked what the pressure is now. And if we see a significant decrease, then obviously we'll have to go to one cooler. But if this works, if it's fine, it really is the best of both worlds. More fluid capacity, more coolers, more cooling surface area, fan, no fan, airflow, all the things, all in one, well, two. So anyway, I'm jibber jabbering. Basically, I'm going to put this Mishimoto bar and plate oil cooler up front. I've got this scrap material. Start cutting, bending, drilling, welding, making these brackets, getting this thing mounted. So for making these brackets, I'm trying to keep this as simple as possible and not overcomplicate it for no reason. I really enjoy doing fabrication stuff. Even though this is pretty simple, you can almost hardly call it fabrication, but sometimes it's hard to resist the urge to overcomplicate, but we're going to keep this simple. So basically I cut out some plates from that scrap material, which I'm pretty sure that scrap material came from the crating of our 3-car lift, which is kind of funny. I love repurposing stuff, but went ahead and got it bent to shape and then started mocking up the cooler with the brackets to see how much bend we really needed, because we've basically got to bend it to go around the piece of tubing that we're welding it to and then have a bend back to angle the cooler up. Now the reason for that is really purely ground clearance. If we could keep it flat, that would probably be a little bit better for cooling performance, but it's really important that this thing doesn't get smashed into the ground, and this truck is extremely low. So ground clearance is a priority, and it's at a premium. So once I got them bent to shape and got them matched up pretty well, I went ahead and set up the mag drill so we could start drilling our holes in these. I went to get lazy and just eyeball marked these holes, but I've done that a couple times lately and I've regretted it every time. So this time, try not to be lazy. Took my time, marked them out so that way they're even, and started drilling the holes. I'm not a huge drill press guy. I normally use a hand drill and put these in the vise, so trying to determine the best way to hold them still while I drill through them was a little bit challenging. It's just not something I do very often, but I'm trying to work smarter, not harder, be a little more efficient, and the drill press definitely helps with that when there's a lot of holes. Something small like this, probably negligible, but you know, we're going to use it anyway, get accustomed to it, so it's part of our routine. So once I got the holes drilled, I went ahead and chamfered them just a little bit just to clean them up. I like doing that. Makes it nicer. You don't have any burrs on there when you try to put the bolts in. And then we needed to shorten our bolts. These bosses on this oil cooler are really, really short, so we had to cut the bolts a little bit shorter. And then everything's looking like it's gonna work. So we mocked it back up there, and I'm overall happy with it. I think this is gonna work. All right, we've got our mounts made for our transmission cooler here. Pretty happy with how these came out. The bends are a little curvy, which I'm not fond of aesthetically, even though you're not gonna see them, but it works out because the whole reason for this bend here is just to give us more surface area to weld on when we mount this to this piece of tubing here. Clean this material off and get it ready for welding, and then we'll mock it, tack it, take it apart, weld it, put it back together, and then we'll have a mounted cooler and we should be able to start making lines. But so far I'm pretty happy with this, with how this is coming out, the location, the angle. I think it should be tucked up away and out of danger, but should still be getting some airflow. We'll have to work on some sort of ducting too, but one step at a time. That being said, if I want to get this done, I need to quit jibber jabbering. We need to get back to work. So welding on a car comes with its own challenges compared to welding stuff on a bench, where you're kind of controlling the environment. You can keep everything nice and clean. It's usually new material or material that you've completely cleaned, whereas on a car, stuff's always dirty. So even though I don't normally MIG weld things because I don't need the speed and efficiency of MIG welding, I prefer to TIG weld stuff. When it comes to welding on the car, I'll usually MIG it. It's also easier in these scenarios. You know, I had to hold the cooler up there all bolted together, tack them on, and then take it off. That way everything was exactly where it needed to be. So there's times where MIG welding makes sense. But what the other downside to welding on the car is there's usually grease and grime trapped in these places. And this tube is a perfect example of that. There's 20 years of grease and grime in here. And when you put a lot of heat to it with a MIG welder, that 20 years of grease and grime decides to turn into a bit of a smoke show and create a 4D welding experience. So that was a little tricky, but we got it welded up. These things should be super solid. There's no way those are going anywhere, but we had to take a little break to, you know, put the fan on and clear out some of the smoke. But once that was all done, it was time to bolt the cooler in officially. So we went ahead and tossed these reducer fittings on. You know, this cooler has built-in -10s. We're using -6. Then we could bolt it up and see what it looks like. That is solid. So transmission cooler number 2 is mounted. You can see it is up above the subframe with our tilt that we've added. Really, really happy with how that turned out. Should be a good spot for it. Hopefully that does the trick. So next up is lines. Basically what we're gonna do to start with is take this line that's gonna go into our cooler here, and then we're gonna do another line that goes out of the cooler and back into this cooler, and then leave the line going from this cooler back into the transmission. That is the plan. All right, gotta go on our AN fitting and wiring box here. Let's see, do I have any 90s and 6? Oh, we do have a 90 and 6. I think between those, we will find something that will work. I always try to buy extra whenever I need a line or a fitting. Because 1, you don't necessarily know what you need if you don't have them on hand. And 2, it's good to have this stuff around. Instead of having to order these lines and fittings a week ago, I've got them on the shelf. All right, now for the not so fun part. I've got to get a little messy here and undo this line and bring it up front here. So fortunately with this scenario, we only have to make one line because these lines were originally running to the front cooler and then they were long enough to switch to running to the back cooler, and now one of them is going back to the front cooler. So I got that one tidied up and then started determining what fitting and line length I needed for this line, the longest one that's got to go from the front cooler to the back cooler. Now, I'm not in love with this whole concept. This is a lot of lines and a lot of line length that the fluid has to flow through. But hey, if it works, it works. So I went ahead and put the first fitting on. This is normally Josue's part of the projects. He's the line. He's become the line guy. He did pretty much all the lines on the Vet. So I feel a little out of place. I haven't made an AN line in a while. It's just not my specialty these days. But we got the first fitting on, got it in and routed. That's how I like to do it. Route it all the way, attached, and then cut it. Fortunately, I have these AN line cutters, so I don't have to worry about making a mess in the line like you do when you cut it with a grinder. So I went ahead and got it cut, got the other fitting on the end, and then tidied it up, and we can attach it and see if it's all going to work. It's a little tricky to get up in here to where this cooler is, but all in all, not too bad of a project. The nice thing about building a full-size truck is you've kind of got a lot of room in most places to run things and route things. It's not like what we're used to with our import cars where there's just no room for anything. So since we're going to be topping off the transmission fluid, I wanted to go ahead and change the oil. We had an issue where the truck was sitting outside and it was getting rained on, and that was filling up our catch can with water, which was then backfilling into the engine. So we got water in our oil, and that's not great for lubrication and pressure. So went ahead and did a quick oil change, new filter, so that way all the fluids are fresh before we go really truly thrash on this thing for the first time. More to fill that cooler up in the new line. Probably do a whole quart. This is like less than half. All right, we topped off the transmission fluid. We'll have to check it with it warmed up, running in part. We got the oil filled up and an oil change done. We're gonna lift it up, check for leaks, and then drop her down, turn it on. All right, well, here is the finished transmission cooler. This is the most solid, 2-bolt cooler mounting I've ever done with that. This thing, it ain't going nowhere. Will it work? We're about to find out after Josue tidies up my zip tie job. Wasn't good enough.
You said it.
I did say it.
I was just following up. And then once I'm done with that, I'll work on making that, doing the button wiring. And if that all goes well, then hopefully tomorrow night we'll do a little test hit somewhere. All right, well, so far so good with our dual transmission cooler setup. No drop in line pressure percentage, so that's good. So the next thing we need to do before we can make a draggy pass in this thing and properly launch it is we need some sort of 2-step transmission brake button to activate our launch with. Now, keeping with the theme of this truck being, stock looking on the inside, I don't want some, button up here on the steering wheel or something that tells you this is a race truck. I want it to be discreet. I mean, kind of like how we did our digital dash here. So we put it in here so it kind of looks like a doubled in radio, but it's actually our Holley standalone digital dash. So the same concept with the button. So what I'm thinking, if we can make it work, is to use this overdrive button. This button's not doing anything anyway. If we can make this work as our input to transmission brake and 2-step, that would be amazing, because once you're down in drive, you're right here, hold the button, launch. That being said, I'm gonna quit jibber jabbering and get back to work. I'm gonna pull this wire out, get the voltmeter, see what happens when I press the button, and then go from there.
All right, I'm hoping this switch works the way I'm going to assume it works, which would be when we press the button, these two wires get continuity. So like right now, no continuity. Yeah, and it goes away. It's not latching, so that's perfect, because we want it to be able to, you know, hold the button. The beep is the two-step launch control. Boom, launch. Sick. All right, so this is gonna work like I had hoped. Nice. Exciting stuff. Takes a little more time than just whipping a button in here, but way more satisfying. So for our terminator, these are our input and output wires. Run one of those in through the firewall, like we have our boost control knob. Hook that up to one side of the switch, hook the other side of the switch to ground, and it should work. So as a whole, I enjoy wiring. I really love doing this kind of stuff, you know, setting up a button that was never meant to be used for two-step to work with two-step. It's fun, the programming side, I enjoy it. But the one thing I dislike about wiring is laying on your ribcage under a dash trying to hook up wires, which is what we're doing here. But hey, that's the price you gotta pay to do what you want to do. So basically, we got the wire ran through the firewall coming from the Holly, and then we're hooking up another wire to go to ground, and in theory, that should complete our circuit to do what we need it to do. Alright, well, that should be our transmission brake button wired. The last thing, before we set this up and pull our hair out because it doesn't work, we are going to test it here. We should get continuity when I press this button. One side of the multimeter is going to the battery ground, one side of the multimeter is going to our pin. So let's find out. Yep. Alright, cool. Sweet. Just wanted to make sure. That way, if we're having trouble getting this set up, we know that it's not mechanical. Our wiring works, and that ground works. Because we could be grounding to something metal that's not grounded to the rest of the system. So one wire is running to a ground, and then one wire is running to a pin on the ECU. So when we press this button, that ECU pin gets ground. So we're gonna go, now the HP support assistant. So we're gonna go in here and tell the ECU, when this pin gets ground, I want you to do X, Y, and Z, which is gonna be all of our launch control steps. This is our transmission inputs. Basically what we're gonna be doing is putting the transmission in manual mode. So when we go to launch, we're gonna go to third. When we press this button, it will put it into manual mode, which will put it in third gear. It'll also enable our rev limit 2, which is our two-step, and they'll sit there, build boost, and then when we let go, it'll go back to auto mode and shift to first. Now the reason for that is because it's easier to have mechanical advantage to build boost if we're in third than if we're in first. It does cause a delay, but that is the best way to do it with a 4080 that doesn't have a true transmission brake in it. Boom. All right. It's in there. So now we got to warm this thing up and give it a shot. Two-step check. This will be our first two-step check.
Put some heat in the motor.
We're going to do a two-step check. Before you say your neighbors must hate you, my neighbors are cool. It's pretty quiet too. Builds boost quick. All right, we're gonna do a little test launch in the driveway. I don't think my neighbors would care if I did it in the street, but I will do it in my own driveway.
Got some room.
Got enough room.
Give it a shot.
Just a little, just let off the button.
works.
Dude, it lifted up too.
Let's go.
Did the combo right too.
It looked like it did the thing.
Clutch and brake.
That's perfect.
It was like, what? I felt the front flip.
Whoop.
Yeah, it was like probably a pound of boost too.
Nice.
Can't tell you how excited that makes me. All right, we need a tool bag. We're gonna go scope out some spots in Mexico where you take the ferry over there. It's a little shorter. The transmission doesn't overheat after we're driving for a little while. Always bring tools with you, kiddos. Oh, and a fire extinguisher. We need to put one just straight up in the truck. I have that nice one too, even though it doesn't really have it right now.
That's strong.
We'll bring that and a regular one. Hopefully we're covered. If it does set on fire, we can try it with a nice one that won't ruin it first. Alright, we are gonna make sure we get to the ferry on time and head to Mexico. At least scope it out for later this evening. This is not legal advice.
Just smooth.
Yeah. Well, man. See how it does when I wearing converter lock up on temp. I mean, it's still not really even operating temp, so we won't know until we give it a long enough drive. With the higher stall converter, it's slipping all the time.
Just constantly creating that heat.
But it's like, I wouldn't think it would be as dramatic as it's been.
This general area.
This would be great.
He's just chilling. Do the thing, do the thing.
I don't know what that clock is. That clock seems different.
Not too shabby.
That was like half throttle.
I think I might have seen 1 pound of it.
Yeah, I couldn't. It was started spinning a little bit. Cents. Kind of. Oh gosh, that was the transmission now. It's kind of hit a teeter point. So I definitely had to rebuild that transmission now.
Let's see what it does. Let's see what it does. So here's how far it would go down if you were like on the highway.
Yeah, same. I mean, it's better. It's the best it's been, but I just still feel like it's not great. It does good once you're on lockup. So we've got a bit of a clunk. So we're gonna go ahead and change the rear end fluid. I've got some lying around for the vet, so some good quality synthetic. So we're gonna drain it, replace the fluid in that. Just give this thing a hope and a chance it'll hang in there to these launches.
Give it its best shot.
Yeah.
Let's see what's in here. See how it's gonna start its life.
Not terrible.
Be the table.
We're gonna try to basically cut these recessed parts out because the cooler is right behind there. So I think giving it a little more airflow might help our cause some.
First try, first try. Shoo!
All right, well, since I was just testing to see if the systems worked, we didn't set the air pressure. I have them up, I guess they're at 20. I thought I had them at 30. Drop them down to like 15. we get?
Take a peek.
0 to 60, 5.6, 8.9, so I must have let off before the 8th one. I'll have to look when we get back. It's 2.45 seconds, 60 foot. We went off really early. I mean, we did a 977 at 56. So after driving the truck around some more, I mean, we had got it pretty good as far as the transmission temps are concerned, but it was just manageable. And I don't want manageable. I want this to be something where I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to think twice about it. I can drive the truck wherever I want to go and not be worried that we're going to have problems with the transmission overheating. So we decided to get a little bit radical with our next solution and cut some holes in the top of the bed to allow that underbed cooler to get some fresh, cooler air from above the bed, as opposed to using all the hot air that's heat soaked with the exhaust underneath the bed. Now, it's not the ideal solution, but you know, if it does the trick, it does the trick. So hopefully this combination of things will get us where we're trying to go. All right, well, transmission cooler revision number 5, 6. We've now got the holes. You can see from the top here, you can see the cooler. So it should get better airflow that way, or at least cooler air from above the bed as opposed to everything under the truck. Hoping that helps. We also reversed the order. So it goes through this one first and then the front second, as opposed to the front first, this second. Hopefully that helps. Small changes. Chipping away, trying to get this thing, it's manageable as it is. I'd like to be able to not have to ever worry about it. That being said, I've been playing with the tune to try to get this thing to launch and get out of the hole without blowing the tire off. And I'm messing with boost curves and trying to tune in a boost ramp. But we have a little bit of a problem there, because with the way we have our boost control set up with the 3-port boost controller, I had to run a pretty stiff spring in the gates to get this thing to make as much boost as I wanted it to make. But the problem is that means that we can't turn it down or make any less boost than what the wastegate spring is with our current setup. So I think it's 8 or 10 pounds is on the spring. So that means it's going to make 8 or 10 pounds as soon as it can. From there, we can control it, but that's really where we need to be controlling it. So we need to make some changes there long term, but we are going to be changing the turbo anyway to a larger turbo and change the wastegates. And we're going to change all of that anyway. So for right now, we have a little bit less tools in the toolbox to get this thing off the line, but I still think we can do it. And I'm having a lot of fun just tinkering with it and trying to get it to launch and playing with the setup and the power management. I have been waiting years to let off the button in a vehicle of my own. I wanted to do this for so long. So I'm having a blast, even though we've just knocked the tire off every time. We're learning, we're tinkering and figuring out what this thing likes and how to kind of work around not having all the tools. And I think we're getting there. So we're going to try again. And we're also going to find out whether or not the transmission cooling is adequate now. We are going to rhino line this as well. And there's more stuff, more go fast parts going in the bed. Anyway, so don't judge that too much. What do you think, Josue? You having fun? So we took a nice long test drive, not in lockup, to really test out the transmission cooling now, and it was leaps and bounds better. It took forever for it to even get to 150, and it would cool down if you were in lockup or cool down if you were sitting. It was looking very promising. I think we finally got this where we were trying to go.
Happy New Year.
Oh, let's see if it'll do 159, so we can say it cools down to the 150s. Because, I mean, it's going down.
This is full operating temp.
Yeah, everything's hot. Well, we just drove at me. We didn't do a pull, but we did. That was like a 20-minute drive.
Yeah.
Which was almost all not in converter lockup. And it's cooling down.
There it is.
Oh, yeah, let's go.
Nice.
That was the biggest thing. I'm like, it should cool down when we're sitting there parked, you know?
Exactly. Nice. Very nice. Getting somewhere.
Gear launch turned down to 3,200 RPM.
How's it feel?
Pretty good. Can I do another one going that way?
Go for it. How's it feel in there?
Good.
Nice.
Now out there.
That was fun. That
was
looked fun.
Yeah, it was good.
Did it feel like it took off?
Yeah. See if it'll cool back down when we start driving. That'll be a good test. I mean, I did 4 launches
Literally, back to back.
after driving it here. It feels like it starts to go, and then it starts to, like, as soon as the boost comes in so hard, it just then knocks the tire. Maybe it's cooling down.
Oh, nice. Way down. It's out of the yellow.
Yeah, it was upset. All right, well, we're finally getting somewhere with this transmission cooling to start with. This thing cooled down fine on the way home. I mean, that was 4 launches. It did get up to 210, but we started at like 150, 160, and it cooled down while we were cruising in lockup. So we just ran it over here, sprayed both coolers down with water to bring it down to like 130, so we can go to the other side of Mexico and try a long enough hit to get the draggy to record. We weren't going far enough and fast enough top speed to get the draggy to record any of the runs. So I really want to see what this thing can do, and we're getting there. We're fine tuning. So yeah, test and tune, baby. Testing.
There you go.
Did it not do it? It didn't do it.
No bot. Oh, what the hell?
I'm gonna foot brake it this time. Foot brake definitely was better.
Just takes off.
Gonna do one 4.59 seconds 0 to 60. Mission successful. We made it back home, safe and sound. Transmission temp doing fine. I'm so happy we finally have that transmission temp licked. Woo! We finally got this thing where it cools down, especially when you're in lockup.
Just doing the thing.
It's doing the thing, and it's launching, foot brake launching. It's way better on the street with no prep. Apparently, if we want to, I feel like we got to use some VHD and like do a warm up burnout and everything if we're going to try to get this thing to launch off a 2-step.
Probably be good to know how to launch it both ways. Just
Yeah,
in
because
case.
it's like we go to the track, that's how we'd launch it for sure. But I think on the street, it's like, all right, let's look at these dragging times, dude. Let's see what we got here. Let's see what our 8th mile is. 889 at 56. So like we were way off it by the 8th mile. 2060 foot. Hey, we're getting somewhere. All right, well, I gotta say, I am super happy with where we got this thing to over these couple of days, both performance-wise and reliability-wise. Getting the cooling to where the transmission finally actually cools down, especially when you're on lockup. I mean, the temps just plummet, you know, especially after doing back-to-back runs like that. I could not be happier. And then the performance of it, you know, the fact that we did a 2060 foot with no burnout, no VHT, you know, no prep at all, bare asphalt, like, that's not bad. For a full-size truck, that's pretty decent. I wish the draggy recorded the second run, the foot brake run, because it was for sure better, but at least we got the first run. We did a 2.0, which is pretty good. It's a great start for where we're at, you know, for our first time with this thing and messing around. Like, there's so much more we can do. But anyway, I'm jibber jabbering. I'm so stoked, so happy with this thing. I'm just glad I can finally go drive it around now and not worry about not making it to my destination before the transmission gets too hot. That's huge. So what do you think? How do you feel?
Good. I'm happy we figured that transmission out. Like
Same.
you said, it's like, it's not fun if you can't even drive it
Right.
normally. So, and it feels good. It feels fast.
It feels fast. Feels good. Throws you in the seat.
Yeah. And you let go of the button and it works. So
It all
here
works. The toe/haul ass button.
it falls out, so.
Because it's the toe wall button, the toe slash. Anyway, I'm jibber jabbering. We're hopefully going to take this thing to sick week tomorrow to go hang out with everyone. But for now, we are out of time. So I'm going to go ahead and end it here. But I do want to say thank you for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And I sure hope I'll get to see you next time. Goodbye.